just want to say this is not spoiler free. So if you haven't seen Steins Gate or if you're not finished with it, don't watch this. Cool. I can go into it. So what I love about it is that you're not really sure how serious to take it. Because the opening scenes of it are so deep. Like it's deep in a sense that like it's emotionally heavy. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like unsettling almost. Like he's going on about these things about God and time and space and the universe and all these things, and then like you see Mayuri like snap him out of it, and like he has this look on his face, and you're just not sure like what kind of character he's gonna be. So when you contrast that with the fact that he's goofy than the bitch, you know what I'm saying? Like they jump right into it after the opening, like he's goofy than a bitch, and like Mayuri's kind of an airhead. He's a weirdo, you know? Like he talks too much. He has this weird organization thing, and you can't tell if like he's playing or if he really believes these things. Like, but you just know he's a weirdo. Like he's a weirdo. Daru is a weirdo. He's a shut-in pervert. You know what I'm saying? Stereotypical fat nerd into anime and anime girls and all these things. And you're thinking, are these my group of protagonists? You know what I mean? And then the weird stuff happens like the first time you meet Makise Kirisu, right? Because I swear I don't understand, like even after watching it, I'm confused about why he reacts the way he does when he first bumps into her. You know what I'm saying? But then it's like she says something about, you know, you look like you were going to tell me something. What were you going to tell me? And you're weirded out by that because you're like, he hasn't talked to her. And he's like, I haven't talked to you. And then you get a couple of episodes into it and you're like, you know, when you're finding out about them having the time machine with the phone microwave to be named later, and all of this type of stuff, it's like well, first of all, you're caught off guard by the fact that this is a real time machine because you don't expect that. You expect it to just be a regular microwave, and it's not. You know what I'm saying? And so it's really weird doing that. You wouldn't have expected that's where the time travel elements came from. And then as you learn about the world lines and the things, like around episode 8 or so, I started to ask myself the question. I was like, you know, I'm just pondering over the things that are going on in the series. I'm getting goosebumps even talking about this series. This was just very, very good series. I was thinking, I was like, had he already time traveled in the beginning? You know what I'm saying? Like, because I was like, I don't know how it would have worked because they kept bringing up not meeting your old self or your other self, right? But every time he jumped world lines, it wasn't ever two of him. It was like he was just jumping into another consciousness, like within himself. So like you never would have thought there would have been a time where he would have had two of him in any given location. But for some reason, I couldn't shake the fact of that one line where she was like, what did you have to tell me? You sound like you were in a hurry. I was like, I wonder if he had already time traveled the first time we saw that. And so by the time you get to the end and it's revealed that he did, it's like, it's one of those satisfying things, at least for me. I was like, I knew it. But what I like about the show is it keeps consistent with its time travel rules, and it's a fundamentally sound story in a way that I've honestly never seen a story be told this well. Usually when you see it told this well, it's usually rudimentary, and that's what but this story is complex. Its characters are complex. The way it shifts is complex, and yet it follows a very simple introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. Like, it is a very fundamentally clear story progression because you know you're at the climax when episode 12 happens and they raid the lab. You know what I'm saying? Like you're the anticipation is building up there because you don't know where these text messages are coming from or why any of this is happening. Da da da. You know, but it's weird in the fact that by the time it does happen, you're almost still shocked by it. You know what I'm saying? Because it almost still feels like during that entire time, they're just playing around, you know? And then once the raid on the lab happens, it very quickly shifts from a playful little contraption time travel story into this is life or death. This is a story about someone overcoming loss and, you know, like the playful banter between Makise and Okarin and or Okabe Hyoin Kyoma him the playfulness between him and her, their flirtation, their relationship growing is fun at first, you know. The fact that the lab is growing, all of that is fun. And then once Mayuri dies, it stops becoming fun because it stops becoming about having fun. And that's the thing about it. Like, you kind of descend into madness with Okabe because you're frantically trying to get out of the situation and trying to, you know, get them out of that sticky situation with them. You're right there with them. And yet there are still so many touching character moments that happen that you know people are going to forget once he jumps world lines and they can't remember it all. So it's one of those things where the emotional weight of every character's stories and how you have to go back and they spend all this time, the first 12 episodes, making all these changes that they want to see. And, you know, you like it's not just that Okabe doesn't know them and that he has to find them out later. It's that you don't really know the changes that somebody like Felis is going to make. You don't know why what's his name? The one that's a boy, that's feminine, but he looks like a boy. You know, you don't know why he wants to be a girl other than the fact that he's feminine, but that's not enough to make you realize, like, he wants to be a whole girl or why he wants to be that way or why he wishes he was born that way. So as you go back and you reverse engineer all of these things, like, it's almost sad because in order to save Mayuri, in order to get out of this predicament, you have to rip away the fantasies that they have. And the beautiful irony about going all the way back, and the thing that you realize as the audience, what you realize that Okabe doesn't realize until she says it to him, till Makise says it to him, is that you've spent all this time learning to love and care for her. Like, even if we didn't think it was romantic, even if it was just platonically, like, you spent so much time with her, you love and you care for her. And it's like, bro, even like you're trying to save Mayuri, and through all of this, fate is going to have it that you're still not going to get what you want, because in the original world line, Makise dies. Kirisu dies. Christina dies. You know what I mean? Like, it's a twist of fate that, like, the entire time he's going back through all of the D-mails, I'm sitting there saying it's so messed up because he's spending all this time correcting the reality of all of the people around him and almost tearing away their dreams and their desires and forcing them to come to grips with reality. And yet, in the end, it's going to all lead back to him having to do the same. You know what I mean? And I think the show explores that enough and gives us enough of that to warrant him being able to create a world line where he saves everyone, including his own mental state in the end. I think the show earns that. You know what I mean? I've it's one of those things where I haven't seen that very often in fiction, where a show earns that, where it's like the happy ending. It almost earns the happy ending by making the audience suffer along with its characters. And so by the end, you just wish it could all work out in the end. And it does, but not without its own stains left there. You know? Like, he goes all the way back and then he fails. And then it's like, you know, we introduce another way for him to actually get what he wants, and for the audience to get what they want, and for all the characters to get everything that they want and a happy version of it in the end. But like I said, it's not without the twist of that knife through the heart. And that's why I feel like it earns it. And it's one of the few stories I feel like really earns and satisfies not only its characters and within itself, its own narrative, but it also satisfies the audience by the time you do get to you know, outside of the 1%. You know, when you get to the Steins Gate world line, as they call it. And I think the reason that, besides even the twist of the knife, I think there's a real tangible change in Okabe. Like, he goes from this silly guy, you even see it in Mayuri's rantings to her dead grandma, where it's like, he doesn't really talk much, but he spent all of this time in basically fiction, in what amounts to nothing more than imagination, and what amounts to nothing but his own fleeting desires, spending all of this time growing not only closer with Mayuri, but closer with Makase Kurisu, closer with Daru, closer with Fellas, closer with everybody, all of these people, that even closer with, ironically enough, even though he turned out to be a CERN double agent in those timelines, ironically enough, with Mr. Braun, and being able to see, you know, his desires and how much the only thing he cares about is protecting his little girl, you know what I'm saying? And understanding that his time traveling in the beginning was the reason for all of that. Like, he caused his own kind of pain and going through and experiencing all of those things. But in the end, it makes him a better person. It makes him a person who isn't afraid to care. He isn't afraid to have everybody at the lab. His silly rantings are part of him now in a way that they almost seem distant in the beginning. They seemed like just weirdo fantasy things that he was just making up. You know what I'm saying? For no other reason than to be weird, because he was just weird. But now he does those things, and he realizes that if I'm still doing them even at 30, it's because they are who I am. And me being who I was is what got me all the way here to the Steins Gate world line. It's what all of those friendships that I made, they were real to him because he experienced them, and they grew him up. They grew him into an adult. Like, we saw him become an adult before our very eyes. And that's why I say that the ending is earned, because none of his growth goes away. Like, even if some of the memories, some of them kind of exist, like Makise Kurisu says, it's not like I know them, I know they exist, I know how much they must mean to you, but they're almost nothing but shadows of a faint reality. They're nothing more than dreams to me. I don't doubt that they happen because of what you're telling me, but they're not the real me. They don't shape the me that's in front of you. And he doesn't care about that. He just wants to face the future with the them that are there now, and he'll be whoever he is after experiencing all that he's gone through. And it's like, damn, man. It's one of those stories where it's like, it touches you. I ain't gonna lie to you, I cried. Shit, that was a touching. It was very touching, bruh. And it just, you know what I'm saying? It makes you kind of reflect on your own journey on life, and how fleeting life is and how different decisions cause people to be different ways, and you see all of their motivations, and you start to realize, the life around you, reality is reality. It is what it is in the purest sense of that saying, and that you can't change any of the things that happened, but you can face forward with them. And I think even though Okabe undoes everything, he can't change all that he's gone through. He can't bring the people that he spent all those times with to this timeline, but he can face the versions of them that he has right now and create an entirely new family with what he does have. And that's himself. That's this new version of himself that has gone through and experienced all of these things. So rather than sitting there wasting his life away, you know what I'm saying, with an airhead in my Yuri and just sitting there not saying stuff to her on most days, but loving her deeply, and a guy like Daru who almost seems useless, like being able to make him feel worthy and part of something is something that Okabe should have or had the power to be doing all along, just by having his silly little lab and recruiting all these members in the end that don't remember anything of this experience, but him remembering and being able to love them despite that, and show them a new way of life in which they can coexist all together as one family. Man, great story. Great story. Great story. Great characters. Wonderfully done. Beautifully sound. One of the best pieces of fiction I've experienced in my life. It's a couple of pieces of fiction that I felt this way about. I felt this way the first time I read The Hunger Games when I was in middle school. I felt this way the first time I watched Code Geass and Death Note. And now I feel this way with Steins Gate, bro, where I'm just like, yo. The first time I watched Hunter x Hunter, I felt this way too. Where I'm just like, yo, one of the greatest stories ever. I'm so glad I got to experience that. Like I am truly grateful that I exist in a time where in my time I can take advantages of things like these. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm just glad for it. I'm glad for it. I'm glad I was able to experience that. So, yeah. Thank y'all for tuning in. Peace.